Well, hail and welcome everyone to this week's episode of Midgard Musings. Thank you so much for tuning in. If this is your first time watching, my name is Jesse and I'm always the host here on this channel. The title of the video is a deity discussion. Guys, this week is going to be the first video of hopefully many videos to come wherein I discuss our deities. And we're going to have one deity per video that we discuss. This one, we're starting this series off with the somewhat controversial figure, the mischief maker Loki, the trickster god, if you will. Has a lot of different things that people kind of attest him to or feel he's responsible for. But before we get into that video, or before we get into the video for today and get into all this discussion, first of all, I want to thank you for tuning in and watching. If you haven't already, click the subscribe button down here at the bottom of the video. Click the bell notification next to the subscribe button. That way you're notified every time I upload a video. As of right now, it's just a once a week type of thing, so it's not going to be that much of an inconvenience for you to get that notification, and it really helps with the channel getting seen and getting viewed by everybody out there. So do me a favor and click on that subscribe and click on that bell notification. Let's go ahead and get our candle lit and incense going, and then we're going to go ahead and start this discussion about Loki. I'm actually pretty excited about this this video about Loki because he is not somebody who I have ever really worked with before or felt a connection to. Other people do, and other people have. And so this is going to be an interesting discussion. I have my own views on Loki. Other people have their own views on Loki. We're going to have a discussion. So after the video's over with, go ahead and leave your opinions on Loki in the comments section. So once again, everyone, I want to welcome you. Raise my glass, skull, and hail. Okay. All right. So Loki, right? I made some notes down here, so I'm going to be looking down at them because I didn't want to commit everything to memory. But Loki, if you're not familiar with the Norse pantheon structure of things, Loki is a god of the Aesir tribe. You have the Aesir and the Vanir. Loki is an Aesir god. He is a blood brother to Odin, the Allfather. He's the father of Fenrir, the great wolf, who at Ragnarok consumes and destroys Odin. He is also the sire and father of Jormungandr, the world serpent, as well as he's also the father of the goddess Hel, who resides and rules over the underworld, Helheim. The mother of Hel, of course, Loki's the father of all these figures who I've mentioned, but the father, of course, is Loki, but the mother was a giant, I believe, for Fenrir and Jormungandr, but Angeborda, I'm saying that is also a giant. He kind of got around. He's also there's a story in lore about the defense of Asgard, the wall being built, and Loki transforms himself into a mare of a horse and ends up becoming the birth figure for Sleipnir, Odin's eight-legged stallion. So Loki gets around. He's all kinds of he changes his appearance. He changes his form. This is sort of the basis of Loki. Loki's also the reason why Balder was killed during that time when Frigg, who was the mother of Balder, got the all of the everything in the Nine Realms to swear an oath to never harm Balder, to make him basically untouchable. Loki found a loophole there and ended up discovering that Frigg didn't get the oath from mistletoe. Loki goes out to get the mistletoe, creates a spear, comes back to Asgard where the gods are playing this game of throw things at Balder. Nothing is hurting Balder. Hold, the brother of Balder is sitting off to the side because he's blind, he can't see. Loki involves himself in the game by giving the spear of mistletoe to Hold, who then throws it at Balder. Balder dies. I've posted a video during the Midsummer celebrations about that story, and you can check the card up in the description, or the card that's going to be up here for that video. But basically, guys, you know, Loki's there's so much about him in lore that you can go back and study. He's a mischievous type of character. Even though he does some sense of good for the gods, we don't really have any sort of historical evidence of Loki worship, right? To be honest, there's not a whole lot of evidence historically that would support how heathenry or how the gods were worshipped, right? There's not a whole lot written down historically, at least pre-Christian Scandinavia. A lot of stuff was written down after the fact, after the conversion. But for all we know, basically, is we don't know that the old Norse people actually even recognized and celebrated or worshipped Loki as a figure in their practices. So there's that. We don't know. What Loki does do in the lore and in the mythology is he helps the gods. He does things to help fix problems that he sometimes has created. He's also one to just be, in general, just insert himself into these situations that he may have caused. A lot of the problems, like for instance, the whole the building of the wall around Asgard. The reason why he did what he did, changing himself into a mare, was to buy the gods some time because of something that he said, and it created a whole problem, right? And then, of course, again, the problem that he is the figure who ends up killing Balder in a roundabout sort of way. Even though he didn't necessarily throw the spear, it was because of his trickery and because of his, actions that Balder was killed. And, incidentally enough, that action, that deed, is what got Loki, wrapped up or bound by the entrails of his own children until Ragnarok. Just because the gods had enough. They didn't want any more to do with him. But again, Loki alternately helps the gods and the giants, depending on which course of action is most pleasurable and advantageous to him at the time. Loki's all about the here and the now. He's all about doing things that he feels are beneficial. He's an oathbreaker, a kinslayer, and Utgard, right? His place in lore after everything that he did when it came to helping the defense of Asgard, all the other things that he's done. After all that, the gods said, we're having nothing more to do with you. You're now outside of our inner yard, our Midgard, right? So I'm talking now about some things that are specifically what you would see in lore about Loki. My personal opinion of Loki is because of these things, because of all the things that he's done, and the place that he ends up. He ends up being, when Ragnarok is upon us, then he leads the forces that fight against Asgard and that fight against the gods. So he is Utgard. He is outside of that inner circle. For that reason, I don't really feel the need to invoke him or the need to work with him in ritual. We're going to be talking about somebody who I know and am friends with, who has actually worked with Loki, and some of his dealings and some of his insight. But Loki's actions that aid the gods are usually done with cunning, with trickery, with a bit of humor, if you will. When Skadi comes to avenge the death of her, I think it was it her father. She comes and demands certain things to be done to avenge her father's death, and the only way that she'll leave, the only way she'll leave alone is if any of the gods can make her laugh or make her smile. And what does Loki do? He ties his testicles to a goat, and they have a little tug of war. It makes Skadi laugh. So again, the things that Loki does aren't necessarily actions that what you see in most of the other gods' personas, like Thor, his bravery, his courage, his defense. Tyr and his self-sacrifice. Odin and his wisdom, and Frigg and Freya and their love, and all these different things that the pantheon of the Norse gods embraces as good and valuable things, traits to have. Loki's, he's all about the laughs, he's all about the LOLs, if you will. He's about the things that make him look good, but when it comes down to it, if it's a bit mischievous, that's just Loki's style. One thing that I do want to mention, guys, if you're watching this now, and you're watching this tonight, obviously for those that are watching on Facebook, was it a night or so ago? It was Friday night? Friday night, there was a little bit of a glitch if you were on Facebook trying to use the Messenger app. You couldn't send or receive messages. That just so happened to be at the same time that I was talking to my friend about his dealings with Loki via Facebook Messenger, and then for that brief time, Facebook Messenger took a little crap on us and we couldn't use it. Coincidence? Yeah, very well could be. A lot of time, all it was just, restarting your phone or whatever, and it was working just fine. But I find that interesting that we were talking about Loki, and at that time was when Facebook Messenger decided to not work. Kind of tricky, if you ask me. But some of the things that I had asked my friend about, because he's actually invoked Loki and has worked with him in ritual, was, one of the things I asked him was, if he himself was drawn to Loki, or if Loki, if it felt like he was calling to him, if Loki was calling to him, or if he felt drawn to Loki. His reply was that he was drawn to Loki back when he was in high school, and he was studying Norse mythology and the runes, and he felt that for whatever reason he felt a draw or a pull to Loki. So then I asked him what did his presence, or what does his presence feel like, to which he replies that he has somewhat of an energizing presence that reminds him of the thrill you get as a kid when you do something that breaks the rules. So that kind of like an adrenaline or an endorphin rush, I guess, is what I would take that as, is the feeling that Loki's presence has. His energy has that sort of, I shouldn't be doing this, I'm going to do it anyway, sort of attitude. I then asked him what benefit that he got from working with Loki, and what those things brought for him. To which he replies that Loki's instilled in him that it is healthy to be skeptical of the current societal order, and that he taught him to be self-reliant, and assured him to not be afraid to manipulate opportunities to his advantage when they arise. And that is another thing, like we said, we've been talking about, some of the things that Loki's done. He's taken hold of a situation, he's instilled or inserted a bit of chaos, necessary chaos into situations, and then he's turned around and fixed them, or mended what he could in his own ways. But he's always been that force of kind of just reckless abandon, if you will, chaos. It's something that you need to do to stir the pot. The pot needs to be stirred, and by golly, we're going to stir it now. And sometimes that does need to happen. And if that's the essence that you get from Loki, it could be something that's applicable in your life. And then finally, my final question was, would you work with him again? Since this is going back to his high school days, and here we are now, some 15, 20 years later. Would you work with him again? And he says he still values Loki's insight and does hail him from the south in ritual when he needs to prove the result. So there's that. There's some other insight of somebody else who has actually worked with the trickster god, who's actually worked with Loki, who has had his presence mean something to him in ritual and in life beyond just at the altar or within the Vey. So for me, and again, this is just me personally. He's an Aesir god. He's kind of lived. He's made his mark, among the gods, and the gods in lore really didn't. They only put up with him for so long, Look at the poem Lokasena, which we may be talking about in a future video on this channel. But if you look at the poem Lokasena, where Loki comes into Aegir's hall and just basically starts to, it's like everything that the gods say to him, he always has something else to say back to them, kind of dissing them, if you will, speaking ill of them. And then at the end of all that, they said, you know what, we're done with you, Loki. We've had it up to here with you, and they bind him. And there's more in the lore that you can go back on that. But in terms of my personal involvement with Loki, I'm not too quick to deal with him or invoke him in any way. It's just not something that I personally want to deal with, just because of what he did with the whole Baldur thing, and how the gods said at that point, it's, you're Utengard, you're out. That's not to say that his presence and that his essence is still not going to be around us. Like I said the other day when we're, talking about the Facebook Messenger thing, and then all of a sudden it wasn't working. It's like, there's this meme or whatever on social media about this ancient Norse proverb, or this ancient Norse saying is, Loki, you little shit. Or Loki, you bastard, or whatever. Excuse the language, but you get it. A lot of people like to blame Loki for the bad things or for the crazy things that happen. But if that's how you feel, you're not wrong in that. There's no right or wrong here. This is just a discussion. So, guys, if you have your own personal views on Loki and you've dealt with him or you felt his presence, let us know in the comments section down below. Don't forget to become a subscriber. All that information is going to be up here at the end of the video. I'm going to get off here on the YouTube. You guys down here in Facebook land, stick around because I want to check all the comments. There's a whole bunch of stuff going on that I want to read back and have a little bit of a discussion with you guys on. But thank you all so much for tuning in for this week's episode of Midgard Musings. Don't forget to tune in. If you want to become a part of the live feed discussion every week on Facebook, just follow the description of the video for the Facebook page link. Make sure you have the page liked and your notifications turned on, so that way you know it whenever I go live on the page. And then as far as anything else goes with the channel, turn your notifications on. Bell notification is next to the subscribe button. Become a subscriber. All that information is going to be right up here. Anyways, thank you guys so much for tuning in this week, and I will see you all again in the next video.